Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. This is the first panel, lots of energy. We have lots of energy, so hope you do too. We are all very excited and grateful to be here. The purpose of this panel is to look at the current and future state of scholarly publishing from the perspective of some early career professionals. This is a strategic mission of SSP to understand this generation better, so we're really happy to contribute to that conversation. So I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Emma Brink, and I've been at Wiley for almost 3 years. I started as an intern there in our Health Sciences Journals program, and I'm still there. And I work as an assistant editor in that same group. I manage some journals in radiology and gastroenterology and nephrology. I was a travel grant winner last year through the travel grant program at SSP. I traveled all the way from my apartment in Boston to a hotel in Boston for that meeting. It was great, but I really loved the experience and I really wanted to get involved in SSP. So now I serve on the Professional Development Committee of SSP, and along with Matt Cooper, who is here in the audience, we co-chair SSP's Early Career Task Force. And I'm doing this panel, so I was really happy to get further involved. So now I want to take the opportunity to have the panelists introduce themselves. It's a very impressive group of people. We are missing one panelist. Pat Weitzel, who is a researcher at the NIH, is unfortunately sick, so he's unable to make it today, but I think we have a really good crew otherwise. So you can start with Ashley.
Hi, I'm Ashley Kettlehead. I'm an editorial coordinator at the American Society of Clinical Oncology. I'm also a travel grant recipient, and I finished my master's degree in publishing last year at George Washington University. And at ASCO, I help authors, peer reviewers, and editors through the peer review process that we have.
Hi, I'm Katy Meert. I was a travel grant recipient last year as well. A content strategist. I've been with them for about 3 years, and before that I was working at a market research consulting firm for about 3 years. I received my bachelor's in professional writing and creative writing from Purdue, and my master's in publications management from Drexel last year.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amelia Guevara. I currently am a doctoral student in anthropology at the University of Maryland, College Park. I previously worked for the American Anthropological Association as an editorial assistant. My current work, I'm working on 3 major medical anthropology projects, one on HIV in older Black women in Prince George's County, a second one on the Eastern health deservingness in migrant workers on the eastern shore of Maryland, and a third evaluation on transgendered women in a community health worker program in Washington, D.C.
Hi, I'm Nick Dials. I work for Harvard University's Office for Scholarly Communication. I manage various projects as a project coordinator, one being the HOPE Fund, which is the Harvard Open Access Publishing Equity Fund. So we help advocate for open access, and we help Harvard faculty and affiliates publish in open access journals. I started in scholarly publishing with Wiley, working under Terry Talene and with some of the wonderful people here in this room, and really gained an interest in open access and began working for the OSC at Harvard about 1.5 years ago.
Hi, I'm Meg Kane. I work at Bio1 as a communications associate. I've been working there for almost 3 years, and I have a master's degree in English from Georgetown and a BA in English from American University. I've been I do a handful of things for Bio1, but my main focus is PR, communications, marketing, and graphic design.
Okay, thank you all. Now that everyone has spoken, can we hear everyone okay? Sound is good? Okay, great. So I was hoping that maybe we could just start by talking about your current position and how you found yourself on this career path in scholarly communications. Maybe like what you enjoy about your job, what has surprised you, what challenges you face currently. Go ahead, anyone.
Will you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yes. Just maybe talking about how you found yourself on this career path to begin with, and if you're enjoying it, what you like about it, what challenges you're facing.
I actually had a classmate of mine at George Washington University. She worked at ASCO, and she told me about the job, and so I applied, and that's how I came to ASCO. I started getting into the publishing industry actually in my bachelor's degree at Mason. I was on their George Mason Review. It was an undergraduate academic journal, and that I was a peer reviewer for it as well as the editor-in-chief, and that really started getting me interested in the publishing industry.
When I was in the Drexel program, I was still at my old job at the market research consulting firm. It was miserable, and I talked to my advisor, and she knows basically everybody in Philadelphia. And 2 days later, I had a job interview at Elsevier, and 2 days later, I had a job offer, which is crazy because it took me like 8 months to find my first job. But I started as an editorial assistant. We call them content coordinators. And about a year in, I became a developmental editor, and that was my dream. And as soon as I had it, I thought, I don't think this is my dream anymore. And so I had my boss said to me, she goes, I could see you in acquisitions. And I'm like, you're crazy. There's no way I want to be in acquisitions. But I started doing some research on it, and I thought, oh, maybe I do. And somebody who had become kind of a mentor to me, she was hiring for an acquisitions editor, and she said, I think I'd be open to making an associate level if you would join me, come with me to the dark side. And we call ourselves content strategists, but it's essentially an AE. And I was kind of like, I'm not sure, that seems very quick, but I decided to do it. So I've been in this position for about 6 or 7 months. And it's very, 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 very challenging, but I enjoy it quite a bit. I don't have any need to run too quickly.
I started, actually, I finished my master's in cultural anthropology at George Mason University, and then found out about a job at the American Anthropological Association, which was very closely connected, and started as the assistant to the director of publishing there. I actually began my work there with purpose. I knew I would be applying to doctoral programs. Eventually, I took a couple years off, and in the meantime, started to really understand what publishing was within my field. And from there, I transferred over to editorial assistant to Anthropology News, an online and physical newspaper for the association, and really started writing and understanding, the actual process, and from there, kind of a stepping stone to academia again.
There are no challenges in this industry. I started out, I think, when I started at Wiley, I found so many common souls. There's so many of us who had gone to graduate school, seen ourselves as the researcher, as the producer of content, the one publishing instead of the publisher. And that's how I started. I finished a master's at Harvard about 3 years ago, and was disillusioned by the academy, but I still felt so passionate about being somehow close to scholarship and somehow helping, and still had a vision and a passion for that world, and had a really successful interview at Wiley and sort of landed in it. And after a couple of years, I really saw that I wanted to be back closer to the university. I think it was sort of the mission-driven aspect of it being within higher ed, and then a really sort of grassroots feeling unit that's tiny within this massive organization that is Harvard, that really drew me to working in scholarly communications at Harvard. But I think the challenges are, I think one of the challenges I've faced since leaving Wiley, I think it was a really set career track within editorial, and I know it changes, and it has changed a lot even since I've left. But now I find myself in meetings constantly with software developers, and I don't know anything about coding, or I didn't know anything about coding, and doing agile sprint planning, and now I see that it's all about technology, and but we are a really agile group, so I'm learning a lot. But I think it's across the industry that we're all moving quickly, we're changing directions, we're seeing what our priorities are and shifting as they change, and that's fun, and that's why I think most of us are here anyways.
My story of how I ended up in scholarly publishing is very similar to yours, actually. I got my master's, and I had every intention of applying to a PhD. By the time I finished my master's, I did not want to do that anymore. And I had professors telling me, you can go ahead and do that, but before you apply to get your PhD, think if there's anything else on the planet you can imagine yourself doing, and if you can think of one other thing that you would be happy doing, then don't get your PhD. Like, PhD is for people who that's the only path they see for themselves, and I could imagine doing 12 other things. So I decided to go into the workforce instead of staying in the academy. But I love the academy, so I wanted to have a job that was related in some way and stay close to the same kinds of people and the same kinds of missions. And so I did not know, you were asking about anything that surprised us, I did not know this existed. Whoa. So that was a surprise. I had no idea that there was even a job like this. So the only way I found out is because I was desperately looking for a job, and I used Georgetown's alumni network, which I did not want to use, but then I did, and I met Lauren, who's sitting over there, and I'll talk more about her later. But I did an informational interview, and at the end, Bio1 happened to be hiring at the time, and then it all kind of fell into place. But in the informational interview, I remember Lauren saying that there's a lot about working in scholarly publishing that's just like working in any other office, except that the people are awesome. And I really feel like that has been true. So that's how I ended up here.
Great. So I wanted to ask about the training and professional development opportunities that your organizations offer, if any at all, and if you take part in them. I personally have felt that scholarly publishing is an industry with so many complexities and nuances that perhaps it's just better to be thrown in and just figure it out as you go. But I was wondering if you've had those opportunities and taken part in them, and how valuable they've been.
My company actually has a lot of professional development activities that you can participate in. We have a mentoring program that I'm currently participating in. They also have online classes that I can take, and when you're there for about a year, you can also apply for tuition assistance. So if you want to go back to school, they help you out with that.
Yeah, at Elsevier we have quite a few opportunities. Sometimes it's actually just really hard to find the time to participate or know exactly what's there. At least in our group, we don't have any formal mentorship programs or anything like that, but you can always seek out individuals. So that's sort of been the way I've had a lot of growth, is by finding people who are really excited about seeing people grow within the company, and so kind of tapping into those resources.
At my former employment at AAA, I did have a lot of opportunities to really understand publishing. I was able to take more classes. I was able to travel to Wiley-Blackwell in Malden, and really kind of understand and speak directly with the editors of all our 22 journals. At the University of Maryland, I also have a very unique mentorship and advisor relationship, and it's an applied program, so in medical anthropology. So I'm currently working immediately on projects using my writing skills, but language skills, so it's very, very useful.
Currently with Harvard, there's a million professional development opportunities. They really like to keep people within house. They like to grow people in their careers. So they have a whole center. It's called the Center for Workplace Development, where you can take classes on project management and different softwares and all kinds of things. What I find most among colleagues is actually people seeking degrees through Harvard Extension School or through one of the graduate schools with reduced tuition or no tuition payments at all. But for me, the last thing I want to do is get another degree or take another class. So what I've really tried to take advantage of is opportunities like this one, and just really hearing, really being more part of the dialogue within scholarly publishing or scholarly communications, or now that I'm in the library world, hearing what's going on there. So I've been able to travel to some conferences, and what I've learned in the last year is just ask. Ask if you can go somewhere. Ask if you can be a part of a certain conversation. And I've never been told no, so it's been great.
Bio1 has a really impressive professional development package, and it's one of the things I really like about it is that it's varied. For example, someone on staff got their MBA through that program, whereas I'm right now finishing up a certificate in digital and graphic design through Parsons New School, and those two things couldn't be more different, and they're still fall under the umbrella of what we can get help with. So there's something like that, like getting a degree, but we also have smaller things. Like one of the things I found really helpful is we have a subscription to lynda.com, and you were talking about technology and how huge it is for this industry, and it has been such a huge help to be able to just go online and look at these tutorials. I mean, you can find out so much on the internet, but a lot of the best stuff, there's a subscription there. And so I've been really lucky that way. I've also done like, all-day workshops on, HTML or something, just like these like little things that are scalable. And it's been a really good experience. You were talking about like asking, just ask. And I feel like there's so much to know. I started out not knowing this job existed, and now that I'm in it, I feel like it keeps changing. And so having that available to you in your work community is crucial, I think.
Do you feel like there are skills that you're currently lacking that you feel like you need to do your job better? When you look towards the future, are there skills that you feel like you need for that future that you're not getting at your organization, or that employers could offer like professional development opportunities around those skills that you would really like be eager to take part in?
Actually, when I was applying for jobs, I found a lot of people wanted graphic design experience, and I don't have any Photoshop and design. I don't have any of that knowledge, so that's actually something that I personally want to work on. But in my current job, I don't use any of it, so.
Yeah, as we become more technologically advanced, I become very aware of just how much I'm lacking in some of those areas, because when I have conversations with vendors or our multimedia team, sometimes they're talking and I'm nodding, I'm smiling, and they're trying to explain why something doesn't work the way I wanted it to, the way I thought it could, and I'm thinking, can't we just do it? Like, doesn't it just happen? And, I had this dream. Can we just make it happen and come true? So, I think it would be great if we had more opportunities that way. A lot of our resources are more about provide education on the medical side and better understanding what's happening in that community, but less about how to make us maybe a little bit more technologically savvy. But I think also, too, we don't have a ton of opportunities like this one where, we can speak publicly. I have to give a lot of presentations, proposals now, and I kind of feel like I'm back in grade school and holding my science poster and being very nervous. And it would be nice to have maybe some more public speaking seminars or opportunities where we can kind of practice those types of skills.
I was somewhat lacking in more digital, kind of skills, and but at my former job, I was able to pick up InDesign and Photoshop and do those things that actually help me now as an academic. Now I'm able to really I realize that I can pick up these skills fairly quickly, and I'm using open source statistical software, and I'm really, it gave me, that kind of courage to try new things. So
I feel like when I was in editorial at Wiley, I really wished I'd done a degree in finance, but you learn, you learn when you're in the job, and I think now I think I could really use some project management training, and I'm seeking that out. But I think that's, but I also could have used that as well with working with the American Anthropological Association and some of the projects that they were pushing forward with launching a new site and those kind of things. But yeah, I think most people I work with currently, and then most people that I worked with at Wiley, we all had undergraduate degrees in English, right? Do all of you? Who does? Yeah, right? So yeah, a little more business savvy, a little more project management experience. Those would probably be my areas.
I'm going to copy what other people have said. I feel like the number one thing that I need and needed and will, I think, continue to need forever is more technology experience. I don't know which side of it, whether it's more design stuff or more coding or both. But I just think as publishing becomes more and more digital and more advanced in the ways in which it's digital, it's just that's the main area that I want to keep focusing on.
Great. So Amelia, you mentioned a mentor that you have at school, and so I wanted to talk about mentorship a little bit. My mentor is here. He's in the second row, Bill DeLuise, doing a panel tomorrow. Check it out. That experience has been so valuable to me. Bill's a very strong leader. I've learned a lot. But he approached me about having a mentoring relationship, which I was so grateful for. But as I was thinking more about this topic, I was thinking that that's not always the case, and that there are probably a lot of early career professionals like ourselves who are seeking mentors, would like one, but maybe are too afraid to ask, think that the person's too busy and won't have time. So it seems like there are a lot of could be a lot of obstacles in the way of getting a mentor, which would be really valuable to a lot of people like us. So I was wondering if any of you do have a mentor, a relationship, or you have had one in the past, how that connection was made, and what value you've gotten from it.
I don't actually have a formal mentor, but I consider my boss to be, and she was before she was even my boss. She was one of these people where if you go into her office and say, do you want to just chat? She'll chat with you for like 2 hours. And I kind of approached her and said, I think I might want to be you one day. And she's like, sit on down. And we started talking, and she would give me advice about my job before I was even working with her. And she really sort of took me under her wing, and it's been really wonderful. But it was hard. I didn't go into our conversations thinking, you're going to be my mentor. And I don't think I've ever even used that word. If I told her, she'd probably be like, really? That's a surprise. But that's sort of our relationship, even though now I report to her. I feel very comfortable talking to her about the things I want to do. We had a meeting where she said, let's talk about your hopes and dreams. I was like, well, all right. Let's talk about all the revenue we need to make. She's like, no, let's talk about what you want to do going forward. So I think, my best advice is if you don't have a formal program is to find people in your office who are doing the things that you want to do, or who are really leading the way and who seem open to it, and kind of do what I do, just kind of glom onto them and hope that they pull you along.
Since I mentioned that I do have a formal mentorship, this particular program does that for you, but I actually, sought this out individually. I had to make a list and be like, who would be able to, direct me, and connect with me right away. And this is something similar, at the American Anthropological Association. I sought out people and asked them about the job, this unusual publishing job, which I had never understood or even really thought I would be interested in. But it's seek people out and make a list and see what kind of how they match up to your interests.
I have a mentor who's also in the second row. Lauren can wave. Wave, Lauren. I'm paying her back because she's the one who encouraged me to be on this panel. So Lauren actually also approached me and basically said, I'm going to be your mentor. And it was great. And I feel really lucky because not only does Lauren help me with my Bio 1 interests and what I'm trying to do in that job, and how to negotiate just even stuff like yearly reviews, what do I do? What do I say? Just little things that if you've never really, for me this is my first real office job. And I've been there for 3 years, but I still don't know things that I think are really obvious to people who have been in the industry or just working 9 to 5 for a long time. And so going to Lauren with, I think, stupid questions, and also that I couldn't really ask anyone else because it would be too embarrassing. And I think also asking further along, career aspirational things. But what's really crucial to me as a young professional person is that I know I can go to Lauren about things that don't have to do with Bio 1. I don't mean personal stuff, although we talk about personal stuff too. But it's great that I know that if I ever, she's made it very clear from the very beginning that if I wanted to ever leave, that I could still talk to her about my next steps. And it's not something where I have to be scared about making changes. And I think that's really huge because you have coworkers and you can talk to them about the work, but if you're thinking about your career globally, it's hard to find the person you can trust with that information when you're just sort of testing the ground, or what do you see me doing next, or these are the things I'm interested in, what do you think I should be looking at? And that's just been invaluable. I'm not planning on leaving, but it's just good to know that there's someone you can go to for that, who isn't your mom, because that doesn't work. So.
I think I would push back on the idea of mentorship. I really love this question, first of all, but I would like destabilize it and say it doesn't need to be a specific person. So I think right out of graduate school, I wanted a mentor really bad because I had no idea what I was doing with my life. You know, it wasn't like on the streets or anything, of course, but I was still a little bit lost. And I remember actually telling my partner, I was like, I'm working with this awesome publisher, Terry Tulleen. I want to ask her to be my mentor. She's in the second row, too. Look at that. I was like, I want to ask her to be my mentor.
That's our cheering section.
And my partner said, that's really creepy. Don't do that. Don't do that. And so I think what I've learned over the last few years is there are like moments of mentorship that come up with people that you respect, or even the coworkers that don't have to be above you. There's things that you can learn from all the people around you. I work fairly closely with Peter Suber, who's sort of the global leader in sort of ideas around open access, and he's an incredible mentor. Though I get to spend very little time with him. It's just these little drops of information that he gives, and like these ideas that he spouts out that are fantastic. And that happened the same with Terry. That happened. I don't know. I think there's these spontaneous moments that come up, and I have like a myriad of mentors. You know, maybe I'll have an actual mentor one day.
Does anyone have a mentor-type relationship with someone outside of their organization? Meg, you mentioned that you're really comfortable with your mentor because you work with her on a daily basis. But have you ever made a connection like that with someone outside of your organization, maybe at a conference like this, or from some other way of networking with people?
I would say I was also a travel grant winner last year, and we are paired up with a mentor for the day. And my mentor is, I say is because I still think of her this way, but was Lois Smith, and she got me, I left SSP last year, and I was like, I'm signing up for 10 committees, because she was just such like an SSP cheerleader, and it was great to have her sort of walk me around, and I still email her, and I feel like I could go to her for anything. I really do. So, that would be like my best example of outside of work. Mostly, I think it's easier to find mentors inside your own community. But
I still connect with my advisor from Harvard. She is a fantastic Latina theologian, philosopher, who just will sit down and have lunch with me, and probably twice a year we do that. And she's very busy, but she really encouraged me to step out of the academy. But every time if I ever had an interest in going back, she was always like, "Are you sure you don't want to apply?" But also knows that that's not my focus anymore. But I don't know. I think, I sometimes reach back to people that I used to have like a formal relationship with.
Mm-hmm. I have a large network as well. Former, bosses, but also former advisors from my master's. But I've also created a network at annual meetings, and so really through LinkedIn, through Facebook. But I've really kind of pulled and connected with everyone, with lots of people, and I try to reach out every once in a while to kind of, continue the relationship.
Well, speaking of, social networks, what sources do you all use to get information on industry trends, and what's your reading list, I guess, for, being up to speed?
Well, the SSP website.
Good shout out.
I also like to network with people through LinkedIn. I do that frequently, and
I like to read Scholarly Kitchen a lot. And actually, my team at work is great. We constantly, because we're so busy, but anytime somebody sees an article that they think is interesting, they'll send it out to the whole group. So I can't really list one main place, but I think it's important just to try to read the news regularly or read Publishers Weekly and just kind of see what's happening around. And I do like to check out, sometimes they're not quite publishing centric, but there are some like Coursera courses that I think are really interesting, so I try to check those out too, or find somebody who will take one with me about leadership or project management, things like that.
I'm a Twitter stalker, so I have my own Twitter account, but I also have one that's specifically for anthropology. I do have a couple publishing, like organizations on there. So it's interesting. It's kind of like my professional Twitter account. I usually don't tweet, but I just kind of follow it. And I also do, of course, LinkedIn. But also I read a lot of blogs. ones that I consider to be, fairly respectable, but also, things that would, kind of open my mind a bit to other, other groups and other types of work. So.
I would say the same, but through social media is how I really keep up with things. I think it's the aggregators of information, through Twitter. LinkedIn actually has surprisingly become, I think, really robust in the content that people are posting and sharing, as well as however it figures out the algorithm to point you to the information that, to advertise information to you. But I run our social media accounts at the OSC, and I manage that. And so by doing that, I just by default see all this content flowing through our stream. So and then I have there's this great app that you can put on your browser where you just flag articles, and it just keeps them together in one site. And then you can just close all the tabs, and then go back to that one site, and all those articles are. I'll figure out the name if you're interested.
Is it Instapaper?
It's not Instapaper.
That's the one I use. It's great.
But that's how I do that. 'Cause there's so much information constantly thrown at us, especially in this industry.
What they all said. I would also add that these kinds of conferences is a huge way for me to figure out what's going on. I feel like when I look at blogs, I occasionally stumble on something that it's more like a maintenance thing, so I keep up, but it's usually here person-to-person stuff that I feel like I actually really grow and understand parts of the industry I didn't know about before.
Okay. So speaking of that, what is your interest or involvement in industry associations like SSP? Obviously, you mentioned it's a very valuable way to make connections and meet mentors and gather information. But do you think that organizations like SSP and others that you're involved in make their value really clear to you and your peers?
I found about SSP through my master's program. They really encouraged us to apply to the travel grant. And actually, the first year I applied, I didn't get it, and then I tried it the next year, and I did. So I think it really did show me how beneficial it would be. Once I got here, I joined. I'm on the marketing committee and the early career task force. So I just try to accept all the opportunities that are available to me.
Yeah, I learned about SSP through my master's program as well, and a friend of mine who had been a winner the year before told me to apply, so I did. And I think it's been really great because I don't know, I can't speak for anybody else's experiences, but I know for me, it's very easy to get focused on, here's my very specific job on this very specific team, and here's exactly what I do in my little window. And coming to a conference like this, it makes you stop and really take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And when I talk to people and I try to say, look at what's going on in the whole industry, really think about everything, that we're doing and not just our small part. It's easy to say, well, I'm too busy to do that. So I love being able to take a couple days and say, I'm not too busy, I'm going to really think about the industry as a whole. And so I've tried to encourage a lot of my friends to join and to apply for the grants as well.
Sure. I think when I was at Wiley, I was able to go to a scholarly publishing boot camp that was really great. Was it that by this organization or?
I think it's PSP.
PSP, that's right. But I was trying to start getting involved in these kind of organizations. And now that I'm sort of in the library world, it's I've gone to ACRL, which is the American College and Research Libraries Association meeting. But what I'm really happy about being here is that I think that we have so much commonality, and there's so many the same conversations are happening between both, and so many shared interests that now I'm trying to kind of bridge that. Like, how do I do both? How do you hop between both worlds? So they're really valuable.
I went, as I said before, as a early career recipient travel grant person. That's how I went last year. And that showed me a lot about why this organization is valuable. I do feel like there are other organizations I'm aware of that have chapters. And I think I'm really excited because I think SSP is starting to develop chapters in certain cities. I know Boston's starting up. And I think that having not only this sort of once a year everyone gets together and talks, but also having local, finding out who in your community is also in this broader community and getting together with them for sort of low stakes, just happy hour, whatever, and just chatting about the industry and what you're working on, and it would be so beneficial to me as an early career person, but I think anyone really. And partly because I feel like this industry, you can be so many different people in it, and you can grow in so many different directions, but the community is really small. So there's like this weird combination of like the warmth and close-knit community that you get with a smaller industry, but there's so many kinds of roles you can play. And meeting other people teaches you what other kinds of jobs you could have, ways you could grow, areas you don't even realize are of interest to you. And so I think that would be really helpful.
Is there anything else that would maybe motivate you or even perhaps like deter you from joining an organization like this, or any others if you're a part of any others? Do you think that like they make the value really clear?
I think networking in general is very, very useful in any discipline. So I think that's the main, as long as there are networking opportunities, and I mean just kind of roaming around, meeting new people, but maybe perhaps with purpose, like having specific, salons for, this kind of publishing or that kind of publishing. But at least within anthropology, that's, the discipline is divided within, several sub-disciplines. So I think that's really helpful.
I think cost could deter me. If I was not part of an organization that was willing to pay for me to be within an association, there's no way I would do it. That's, I guess, me being cheap. But that's, right? I mean, cost.
It's a very early career thing to say. Very, very true to us.
Yeah, I think cost. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be the one thing I think would deter me, and I'm lucky that I work in an organization that pays for my membership. But I think the other thing that would deter me, I think, would be shyness. Like, I think I was scared my first SSB. Like, I was like, I'm not going to know anybody. There's going to be tons of people, which is why having a mentor for that is such a great thing. Someone to lead you around and kind of say, like, Meg, meet this other person, instead of like you just sort of lingering around someone talking and hoping that you'll just somehow be able to jump in. So I think for some people, I think networking comes easier. And if it doesn't come easy to you, or you're really not sure, you think it's something that's sort of, there's a way to do networking that's really authentic, I think, that's not just like, oh, I need to talk to this person because that will further my career. And I think coming out of college, that's what I thought it was. Networking is sort of, I feel like, I wish someone would have told me it's a fancy way of talking about meeting people who also have jobs. You know what I mean? and like getting to know people. And it can be the thing that helps you get a job, but it doesn't have to be. And I think that the best thing that this organization does is that networking and like the growing of a community and you growing inside of that community. So yeah, I think shyness would have kept me. If like the rest of my organization wasn't also going, I would be like, there's no way.
Well, we're glad you decided to join. So I want to talk about the future a little bit and where you see the direction of the industry heading. Are there any like specific trends that you see emerging, or some that maybe you see fading?
I think one of the trends that I see, or at least I have really big interest in this, and there's a big panel on it, I believe, is library publishing. And when I was at ACRL in Portland, Oregon in March, it was just the buzzword. Whereas like maybe 4 years ago it would have been open access, or 3 years ago everyone was talking open access. It was library publishing. And right now at Harvard there isn't a really big initiative in that. You might have some little startup things, some people doing some things where our office runs sort of an electronic thesis and dissertation, little publishing thing, sort of. And that kind of fits within that world. But I think we're going to see more of that. But as we were talking last night, I think we're going to see a mixed economy. I think open access is going to grow, but where it's sustainable. I think the publisher has a major role to play in the future. So do universities. But that's my vision.
I think we have a couple different challenges, and one of them is we talked about the technological aspects. Customers want things, they want them really fast, they want them available on their phones, and I think most publishers aren't really prepared for that and don't really have the right staff for it. So I could see things going a few different ways. I could see companies sort of forming that are much more like tech companies, or that publishers maybe become a little bit smaller, really focus more on the editorial side, and then outsource that and reach out to small and like niche companies that really specialize in certain areas. I think I could easily see it going one way or another. And then I think another thing is everybody wants stuff for free, and so we have to really rethink our revenue streams right now. I work in books. We make a book and we sell it to you for a certain amount, and that's that. And now we have a lot of customers who are either finding ways to not pay for it, or they're using institutional access. So I think we need to really be smart about what types of models we're going to use going forward, whether that's a subscription model or we go more ad-based. And one day, hopefully, we'll know. We're still trying to figure it out.
I have come from an unusual place where I've, worked for a publishing department and worked with publishers and understand what social science and the humanities, anthropology in particular, really want, which is open access. And this is clearly, something that's been coming about, and it's here, but it's very difficult in the humanities just because of the pay issue. And I think I'm a proponent of open access, but it is, but I also understand the difficulties that come with, do we want, literature that is completely clean and ready to go to be published, or will social science receive some sort of kind of half-done papers or journals? So this is a question that lingers, and it's still obviously it's something that we're talking about right now, but I think that's where we're headed right now.
This is related to the technology aspect of things. I think that users are becoming, not only do they want it fast, I think they want it to be clean and look good. And I think that people are becoming more and more design savvy just by being on the internet, and the internet getting better looking. And they don't know all the time why, they can't always explain it to you, but there's something that feels more trustworthy and just more enjoyable of an experience to use it if it doesn't make you feel claustrophobic, like everything's just smushed together. And I think that academic publishing is focused smartly on the rigor of content, but the delivery of content is going to become more and more important. And I think that there's a skepticism around good design, that it's sort of flashy or it's bells and whistles and it's extra, but I think it's crucial. And I don't think you have to sacrifice good substance to have it also presented in a way that feels modern to people. So that's something that I think is going to become a very big deal very quickly if it's not already.
And I think bouncing off of that, it's also the devices that we're using. We were using tablets, now we're using phones that were this small, and now phones are getting bigger, so we have to keep up with how do we make our content look pretty, on all the different devices that we have.
I love that idea too, that the future of the publisher is as a content curator, and as adding, not being the gateway, or the sort of the bar gate to the research. Sorry, I am an open access advocate, so I think the research should be open, but I think publishers have a role in curating it. There's a way of there being user experience experts, of being, working with the data and presenting it in new ways that will make universities still want to pay for it, that companies will still want to pay for it. And so I think that will happen. That is happening. I saw that at Wiley. I totally agree with you. That's it.
And I think with that, it's like what was said this morning, this speaker, 95% of what's out there is crap, and we need to be able to curate it, but then discoverability is then a challenge, and I'm sure that's a challenge that you guys are facing as well. And that's a big question too, is there's so much out there, and I know when I talk to my customers, they don't know our products they don't really know our products from anybody else's. They're always like, oh yeah, I love and they'll start describing something. I'm like, oh, that's Wiley, or that's, I'm glad you like it. And I mean, I had a focus group actually last night with a group of orthopedic residents who were describing this ideal platform, and the whole time I'm screaming in my head, like, we have that, how do you not know about it? How do you not know about it? So I think that's another really big challenge, and I don't really know what we need to do to continue to accomplish that.
So we talked a little bit earlier about the skills that we might need for the future, but I'm wondering if, as a millennial generation, there are a lot of skills and characteristics that we already have innately that could be really useful into the future. So I was just wondering how you think employers can maximize the potential of early career professionals and the skills that we have already for this future that we're envisioning.
We're bombarded with so many different things that we need to have the ability to multitask and then parse out what's important and what we need to look at.
I think the ability to multitask and having an awareness of what's new and what technologies people are using, and I mean even having a better understanding of what the reality is. I constantly am being told people your age they're not reading print books, and I'm like, I think we are. Or I learned with print books all the way through through high school and college, and so why are we surprised that residents who are my age are you still using print books? So sometimes it's about being the voice of the customer depending on who they are, and I think also I don't know if this is a millennial thing or just an age thing, but I think I see the younger people at our company are much more open to trying out some really new ideas and being a little bit more risky and wanting to try something we haven't done before and knowing that it might fail, but it makes us smarter and it makes us better. So I'm always trying to advocate for that, but it's challenging because I'm the young person in the room and sometimes it's easy to ignore that voice.
It's important to know that, I'm not millennial, but I'm close. I'm toward the very end of Gen X. And, but still, that is, I come from a unique place where I learned very quickly to use technology immediately. And this is constant throughout my life. So I think that understanding that we're able to really jump on technology, but understand that I'm happy just throwing away things and then starting anew, but I'm also interested in, keeping, print or, newspaper, but I'm very flexible in that respect. So.
I would agree with everything that's been said, but I think being able to harness that attuneness to changes in technology and also in marketing. I think we're experts on marketing, even though none of us are particularly marketers, but we know what we like. We know how we like to be advertised to. And I think that there's a way of harnessing that and getting that information out, and sometimes just by testing a product, testing, certain ideas by, like you were saying, maybe the youngest voice or the most early career voice in the room. Yeah.
I agree with that. I don't think I have a lot more to add besides what's already been said. The only thing I can think of would be nope, nothing.
That's okay. So now that we've all had some time in this industry, do you feel like you want to stay? Do you have new career aspirations? How has this time kind of shaped what you see for your future personally?
I definitely feel like I'm going to stay in the industry, but because I'm just started out, I feel like, the world's my oyster, and, if something comes along that I find that I like, then I might go for it. But I think right now I really like it.
Yeah, I really love being in publishing. It's something I've been wanting to do. I love being in medical publishing, and it sounds really cheesy, but sometimes you have a bad day. It's really nice to say, well, I put out a product that I'm really proud of, and I can see the value in it, and I'm not the person out there saving lives, but maybe my books would help somebody save a life. So I think it's something, I don't know if publishing will exist exactly how it is now, and my goal is just to try to stay smart, and maybe I'll be working for a more tech-oriented company one day, but I think I love working with content, and I love working with people, so I think I'll be in publishing or something very similar in my future.
I'm currently writing articles to submit for publication, so I'm on the other side right now, and what I'm seeing is it's very messy, and I'm having a lot of difficulty, reformatting things for another journal that looks very similar, is very similar in content to another journal. So I think I really, I see myself in academia, and I see myself, keeping tabs on the trends of publishing, but I definitely, there's a lot that, I think has potential to change, to make it a little more streamlined, because I think it's somewhat difficult right now.
Talking about the professional associations, I definitely see staying in the industry. At least I think there's what we see popping up is a lot of like para-industry, like companies, tech companies. Things are doing niche little things for us. The same in the library world. And I'm really fascinated by organizations like Ithaca, which have like JSTOR, Ithaca S&R, doing consulting work among publishers and libraries. That's how I kind of envision my career. Like, if anybody in Ithaca's here? I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. But so I think that there's going to be more of those things too, helping publishers, helping universities streamline their workflows, helping them work on strategy, doing research for them.
I think that my whole life I'm going to just be sidestepping. I like all making all these like lateral moves. So I started out wanting to be in the academy, then I just took a step to the side and stayed near the academy but not quite there. And now I want to take another step where I stay in academic publishing but I do graphic design. So because I feel like a lot of the questions about scholarly publishing right now and about the academy are all very near and dear to my heart, but it's the tech side of things that is really exciting to me. So that's the next lateral move.
Well, thank you for all of your responses. We wanted to leave enough time for questions because we hope that you'll want to hear from this group. So if you have any questions, let's start. Yes, Nick.
So what role do professional and development nonfiction books have in your life right now with professionals? Like, do you often seek those things out, or are they recommended by mentors, or what kind of reading do you do that is from the nonfiction era, or if any?
I have a twin sister who's also in the early career, same boat as me, so I actually get a lot of my professional journal or novels recommended to her by me or for me.
If I understand your question correctly, I read Lean In, which is, I think a lot of people have read that one. I actually don't read a ton of those books. I do read a lot of articles talking about like professional development in that way, but not too many books.
I read a ton of books, so I'm constantly reading. But it is a lot, mostly social science. But I tend to. It's a mix actually. So I do digital when it's some are difficult to find, some are older, as humanities books tend to be. But I'm kind of in between both digital and physical books, and this tends to be not just textbooks, but actual ethnographies and kind of also, some like epidemiology and things that are potentially a little more boring than usual. But that's where I am right now.
I thankfully being connected to the world's biggest libraries, I have every book at my fingertips. So I actually do. I check out a good bit on professional development. I think I've been checking out some stuff on project management just because I'm like scrambling to figure out what I'm doing some days. There's some stuff from Harvard Business Publishing that I have access to that I read. I do find that I read articles most though. It's quick. The monograph format is sometimes a little too long, but yeah.
I have no experience with reading nonfiction professional development books, but if anyone has any recommendations,
Yeah, I get my book list mostly from my mentor, Bill. As Nick said earlier, I was an English major. I came into this job with very little financial savvy, so reading books, like we read the 10-day MBA together, so I could have like a very quick crash course in like business. I read things like that a lot to, I guess, kind of help develop my understanding of those kinds of things. Yes?
I had a question on when y'all were talking about resources. One or two of you mentioned scholarly blogs, and like you said, there's a lot of crap on the internet, and I love the Scholarly Kitchen. It's one of my favorite blogs as far as this industry is concerned, but what exactly do you look for in a professional scholarly blog that makes you go, oh, this page is legitimate. This has what I'm looking for.
References.
That's good.
Huge thing. Like I make sure that, I'm aware of, in social science, perhaps like what the schools are within my discipline. And so like, I just check to make sure that, they're referencing the right, literature, or perhaps, it's written correctly, as in grammatically. And so things like that, and potentially has interesting concepts or links or visuals as well.
Just good content. I don't have blog loyalty. I know some people like follow certain blogs. To me, it's all about what comes through my Twitter stream. If it's good content, I'm going to read it. And if it's not, I'm going to toss it out. So sometimes it happens to be that I do find that Scholarly Kitchen and some others, you find that you're hitting that landing page a lot because they're putting out good, they have good writers. But yeah, I think curating your Twitter feed is what's good. Like really start following people that you respect and that are putting out stuff pretty often, and then see who they're following, and then you're going to start hitting certain people that just have great perspectives, and get people that you disagree with too. I think it's really important to get like a really diverse sort of perspective.
Yeah, I go to these blogs enough that a lot of times it's just sort of like what's on the homepage, like what's new, and so I like to just kind of, sometimes it's like my lunch hour. I don't want to spend that lunch hour only on Facebook, so I'll kind of flip through and see what's jumped out. But it's actually nice that sometimes we'll search around if I am trying to present a new project to our editorial board and I need some evidence. Sometimes I like to go and see like what's out there. Can I sort of find some evidence to prove that we should do something that I think we should do. So, something like, if we're talking about doing an app and, wanting to see, is this something that's actually relevant? And then on top of publishing or scholarly publishing specific blogs, I spend a lot of time looking at medical stuff because I'm supposed to be an expert in cardiology and stuff, and I'm not a doctor in any way. So for any of the fields that I work in, I spend a lot of time looking up resources for those to just better understand why we have a certain book or why a certain idea may or may not be good.
Bill.
So a bunch of you talked about how the quality of design, the aesthetic of design is likely to be a future trend. What do you think is driving that? Do you think it's a demographic shift in their readership, or do you think something else is behind that?
I think one key thing is accessibility. This question, like at least within the university, where Harvard recently had a lawsuit, like a federal lawsuit, because of some of the Harvard X material that was considered not accessible to people with disabilities. So I think that's one thing that's like a legal reason to drive a certain type of user experience.
I would say that the more that the internet is just proliferated with stuff, the more people are trying to be competitive in every way that they possibly can. And so one way is aesthetics and user accessibility, whether it's accessibility guidelines for people with different abilities, or if it's just any user trying to get to the search bar and they can't find it. And that immediately, I think people just X out of that window and try. You can find whatever you're trying to find, you can find almost anywhere. So most people, I think, do not have patience anymore for anything breaking or not working or being difficult to find. So I think that's part of it. I also think that people are just becoming more design savvy and they're expecting it. And I think that it's a subconscious thing sometimes. It's not always like right in front of you. You don't always know why you feel a certain way about a website or a certain company that you only know through their website, but there are all these subliminal messages, and I think it's all about presentation. So I think that's why this is going to happen. And with, I think someone brought up before the different devices, there's this phrase that I keep hearing knocked around in design conversations, that the users are now one thumb, one eye. So you're trying to get people to, they're only paying attention to their phone with one eye, they're doing something else, and they're scrolling with their thumb, which is covering up half your content. So you have to find some way to get them to pay attention and like think that this is worth reading for the 2 seconds they're going to be on your site. So I think that's like the competitive edge that people are going to need to start thinking about.
I would echo that as well, and I would say that I won't use something if within a minute, if I can't find something, I'm done, and I'll try something another place. But also, I'm concerned about fraud. I'm concerned, that something that is messy is clearly not made properly anymore, because the competition shows that I have a much better, cleaner site and it's easier to use. I worry, so that's actually why I wouldn't. If something seems unusual, then that's usually an indication of something.
I also think that if the website seems out of date, I worry that the content is too. I don't even wait to read it to find out. I just sort of assume that this particular company doesn't care about being up to date. And so I just go to the next place. So I think that there's fair or not, there's like an immediate judgment, and the judgment's happening faster and faster.
This might be a little unfair, but let's do the thought experiment. You're now, in the future, you become highly successful in publishing scholarly publications. What does your company look like? What are you trying to accomplish? What's your vision? I mean, we all enter this business. Nobody sets out to enter scholarly communications, so we're all here serendipitous. So, do you have a vision, and what does it look like?
I'll say I actually intentionally entered scholarly communications. Yeah, well, and I think that's actually something that's really new for people who are earlier in their career, because who have been in the business for 10, 20, 30 years, they all say the same thing, like, I never thought I was going to be here, and I started something else, and now there's a lot of publishing programs. So I think that's interesting. I think the fact that a lot of us are coming out of college with the thought that we want to go into some sort of scholarly publishing or scholarly communications. And it's hard to say what the vision is. I love working in medicine. And the nice thing is, like, there's a lot of job security. I don't think one day we're going to wake up and say, we figured it all out, we've cured everything, we know everything about the human body. And so I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I think, my goal is always to think about the user. What content do they need? How can we prove that it's accurate? How can we stay relevant? And how can we give it to them in the way they need? And right now, the big thing is they want it fast and they want it accurate, and that's really a really big challenge. And so, I'm not sure what things will look like in 20 or 30 years, but my goal is to always sort of stay on top of what does our user need at the end of the day.
I envision, in my field, I envision anthropology to be something more visible, and I think that's actually the end goal for anything. I think how it can be used in daily life, how it can be disseminated, this information, this knowledge that we have. I don't like it in just journals. I don't like it in books. It has to be accessible and available to everyone to potentially change, and help with current problems. So that's where I envision. It's a large vision, and I think I'm part of it, and to be able to kind of produce knowledge and to make sure it's widely available.
That's the kind of question you ask over martini. I don't know. I would really echo a lot of what you're saying. I think greater accessibility to a global audience. That's what I envision and I hope for, is that in developing countries, the global audience, like in the US, in most of Europe, there's the economy to support paying for research. However, one of the greatest projects I've worked on, in my current role, is really curating stories from our global readership. And what we're seeing is that you don't have to be a scientist, you don't have to be a doctor, you have really random readers that are writing to us saying, your content is doing this to change my life. And I think that's what I envision more. I see staying in the nonprofit world. I see doing, just advocating for better access, quicker access, especially to information in the health sciences and global health and kind of anthropology you're doing. It's a hard question. Yeah.
Part of the reason why I didn't go for my PhD, besides the fact that I could imagine myself doing a dozen other things, is because I love academics. I like academics the people, and I like academics the work. But sometimes it feels insular, and I think that, I don't know if it's open access, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's open access in a way we haven't thought of yet, but it's exactly the people who I think aren't in the field that the information matters the most to, especially in global health and other topics like that. And so I would want that. I would want there to be a way for people to have academic thinking and available to them in a way that they can understand and is doesn't cost a bundle. That would be wonderful. I have no idea how we do it, though. I really don't. And you also asked about what our company would look like. I work for the core staff is 5 people. I have no idea what it's like to work for a big company, never done it. But I would say that one of the first things I thought of was it would be small because of how quickly everything has to change all the time. But I don't know, maybe some people work for big companies that move really fast. I've never heard of that, but maybe it happens.
Yes.
Jeff Kandowski at IFP Publishing. Really appreciate this session and all of your comments. And so I think I relate to a lot of, I got into the industry about 9 years ago. I relate to a lot of what you said, how you got into it, how you think about developing it. The last couple of years I've moved into more of a management role, and so now I'm thinking about how to help people like yourselves with their careers and make the place where we work a place that's desirable for talented people to be at. I just wondered if you had either like a wish list or things that actually happen at your organizations, like ways that managers enable you or things that make your workplace something that is very appealing to you. Those sorts of concerns be really interesting.
My company actually tells me a lot about the resources that they have available before I even know that they're available. So a lot of my undergraduate degree, they had all these things that I thought would have been beneficial, but I didn't know about them, and now I'm kicking myself like, oh, why didn't I know about that? That would have been great. So I think just, instead of having me have to look for the material, it would be great if, you just had some kind of communication to let them know that there's stuff available for them.
And I think just the fact that you want to be a good manager and help people is huge. I've been in positions before where I started a new position or a new company, and literally they'll say, here's your projects, let me know if you have any questions, and they walk away. And it didn't feel like a safe environment to say, I don't know how to do this or I need help. And being in a position now where I feel sort of like I can go into my boss's office and it's a safe zone, and I can say, I'm freaking out after this presentation, and what if they ask me this? I don't know what to say. And she'll say, okay, we'll talk through it. And I think that's always really good. And being somebody who wants to, just wants to have those conversations, say, what do you want to do? Even if that means they might want to move somewhere else, showing that you care about what they want and their growth, sometimes is enough to make them want to stay and continue working for you, and you know that they can become the person that they want to be with your team.
An official or unofficial open door policy always works for me, and this has been in the workplace, which I've had several jobs, or in academia, which I have a very open, relationship with all the professors that I work with or that I take classes from. So I think that being able to kind of drop things and talk to someone, I think that's really important.
I'm thinking, don't micromanage, but don't undermanage either. Stay on top of early career folks. Stay on top of movements. But yeah. I think really giving guidance on how projects should be led, what really clear expectations from a specific organization, expectations from you as a manager and what you expect out of your team, as well as I think critical, honest feedback on work is really good, and not just okay, this is fine, this passes, and let it keep going, or let a problem maybe go on or persist, and then all of a sudden it's a surprise that like you weren't delivering if what you were expecting. Those kind of surprises aren't good. So I think honest feedback, positive, negative, both.
I would say for the honesty part, it really builds trust to hear from your boss that you didn't do a great job on the thing you just did, as long as there's like a dignity and respect that you're saying it. Like I think when early career when you're first starting out, I think at first you're just excited to have a job, and that lasts a little while. And then and then I think what happens is you want to feel like you're part of a team, like you actually are contributing, because your first job usually is fairly admin related, and it's hard to feel like that's enough of a reason to be going to where you're working besides the money. And I think that if you can give people the room to figure out how they want to contribute, and then give them a project that's like maybe too big, just to like give them something that they feel like they can really like struggle with and wrestle with, it makes you feel like you belong and you're doing something that is meaningful. The other thing I would say is for professional development, our CEO and president, Susie Scomo, takes professional development really seriously. I went to her saying I wanted to get a design degree, and at the time it didn't really make sense for Bio 1 to have me get a design degree. And she was like, yep, do that. And I think that you'd be surprised. Now it's like a huge part of my job. We had no idea it would end up contributing the way that it is. So I think if someone comes to you and says that they want to get a degree or take classes in something that doesn't seem immediately related to their job, unless it's totally outside of the bounds, I would say like that's such a huge way to encourage someone, and you'd be so surprised like how it ends up actually making them a better employee and a happier one too.
Yes.
A comment and maybe a question to any of you who want to address it. Given the focus of this session on young developing professionals, I find it kind of ironic that there isn't technology. And I'd love to hear from you about that.
Yeah, so we just have the beautiful SSP logo instead. Well, we wanted this to be more of like a conversational panel, so we did not have any slides, no. I personally find PowerPoints a little boring, so, I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts.
I think it's actually a really good indication. We're on our phones constantly. We constantly have technology around us. The thought of a dialogue was, we were all like, yes, let's do it. Let's sit down, let's talk. Let's not open up to the floor. Let's be face to face. I think that's another part of our being marketers, our sensibility is that we also want this. We want the dialogue.
I think that's the joke about millennials too, is that they're on their phones all the time. Everything they do is technology. They don't want any person-to-person contact. On the other hand, part of being like a stereotypical millennial is having record players and doing it old school and having it be analog and having it be way harder than it needs to be because there's technology that does that for you. But like, I'm gonna grind my own coffee beans, damn it. Like it's, and I think, and so I think that part of it is, in terms of understanding us young people, I would say that part of it is that we don't like the technology all the time either. And sometimes like the best thing is to just, unplug.
The human aspect.
Yeah.
It's definitely welcome. Exactly.
Well, I actually have a question. I know I've been asking the questions like the whole time, but this is something we discussed last night. We all met last night, and we talked about the lack of diversity that we see in publishing in a variety of ways, and how as like a young person, as young women, young people of color, how that can be both intimidating and motivating. And I was just wondering if you have any thoughts on how you might see that changing in the future.
I think it's a struggle all the time, I guess. As an academic, I picked my mentor, and she picked me, really because she herself is a woman of color, and that particular mentorship was really important to me, just because I understood that Working through the previous association, I understood really what the demographics were. And I thought, as a woman who, potentially is interested in family and is married, these kind of questions come up, and how do you deal with, being a professional, being an academic, and having so many very different kind of being pushed and being pulled in many directions. I think it's important to be aware of it all the time, because I think about it all the time. I think if we forget, that we're not insular, that we belong to a greater community and world, I think that's when we start understanding more about, how you can fit in and how, you can help others fit in.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of women in our company, and to a point where every once in a while when a man's hired, it's like everybody sort of flocks, not like in an inappropriate way, but I think sort of like, ooh, what's this? This is very different. But what's also sort of but it's disheartening too, because our executive level is mostly men. So you look at this company that's mostly women, and yet the people who are running the show are men. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily need to be all women in the executive and all men. It does. I think it needs to be better balance and better representation that way. I feel very lucky. I work, other than the gender, the gender disparity. We have a lot of diversity, and I think that makes us a better company. So it'd be nice to sort of see, a shift there, and maybe get a few more boys on our team.
One of the things we talked about last night is just the fact that I think it's great that there are some people who went into this industry on purpose, but I was one of the people, like I've said before, that did not know this was even an option for me. And I think in terms of changing the landscape, at least bringing in new people, I think it's about getting to universities, getting to people who play the role of mentors, to people who are about to look for jobs, and tell them that this exists. Because I had professors telling me not to do the PhD necessarily, but then they didn't have other suggestions. So I was like, oh, I'll be a high school teacher. Oh, I'll go into publishing generally, whatever that is, like just publishing, because that's books, right? So I feel like it's about kind of finding out a way to get in touch with the next generation of people looking for jobs. It's not just the next generation of people looking for jobs. Everyone's looking for a job right now, but talking to people and making them aware this is even an option, I think could change the landscape of who ends up here.
I think recruitment could be, like efforts in recruitment could definitely be ramped up. Really, top companies are out on campuses, like trying to get the best, in a really diverse group of young professionals in their company. So I think publishers could do a better job of recruiting, letting people know that this is an interesting job, it's a great industry, it's changing rapidly. There's all kinds of skills that can be brought to the table. And you're right, because we kind of landed in it somehow. Not all of us, but a lot of us. I would love to see better recruitment. Also within higher education as well, I think. It's the same scenario within like the library world. So.
Any other questions? I see no hands, so I'll assume that means no more questions. So thank you all so much for coming today. We really appreciated having you, and enjoy the rest of your day. If you have any questions, please feel free to come up and talk to us.